Hi everyone, so this week I had chapters 3 and 5, so I'm going to go ahead and share some of my connections with you. So from chapter 3, my first connection was from page 43, and it involved this quote that says, "In contrast to meaning matching, meaning construction is a much more challenging task. It is not an automatic process, but instead requires us to think about moving beyond the standard denoted meaning and to create meaning for ourselves by using the skills of induction, deduction, grouping, and synthesis." So while reading this section, it made me think of texting and emailing. While performing these tasks, it's really hard to understand how the sender is coming across. It's really hard to decipher their emotion, their tone of voice, their facial expressions. So unless you really know the person, it's really hard to figure out if they're kidding with you or if they're really angry with you or if they're happy or if they're being sarcastic. So it's just something that we really have to think about. However, I think in today's technology world, I think being able to decipher this has kind of become a little bit easier with the little smiley faces that we call emojis. So mostly for texting, when you send a text, you can attach these little emojis that, either have a happy face or a sad face, one that shows frustration or anger or, whatever you want it to be, that you can kind of attach with what you're saying to the person. So I think that kind of helps express to the receiver kind of how you're feeling. So that kind of just gets things across a little easier. So the next connection I had with chapter 3 was from page 48, and it involved this quote that says, "Our concentration level is so high that we lose touch with our real-world environment. We lose track of real time. Instead, we experience narrative time. That is, we feel time pass like the characters feel time pass." So in this section of transported state, it's stating that this most commonly occurs with playing video games or computer games, but I also think this happens a lot with TV, especially when people binge watch like a TV series. And I'll be honest, I like to binge watch every now and then. And so I've kind of experienced this a little bit. You sit down to watch a show and a couple hours later you realize that you've watched about 6 episodes in one sitting. And I kind of, sometimes when I binge watch, I start to notice that I get, sad at the sad parts, or when a character's frustrated, I'm frustrated, or when there's a really intense part for a character, I'm super nervous for them. I kind of just get wrapped up in this TV world. And so then when I go to, I just get so wrapped up that I have to keep watching and I have to keep watching and I have to finish the series, and then when it's over and I've watched everything that there is to watch, I still wish there was more to watch. So I thought it was pretty interesting to read about that in the book. So moving on to chapter 5, a connection I had was from page 88 to 89, in which vertical thinking is a systematic, logical thinking that proceeds step by step in an orderly progression. Lateral thinking, in contrast to vertical thinking, does not proceed step by step in a straight line. Instead, when confronted with a problem, the lateral thinker jumps to a new and quite arbitrary position, then works backwards and tries to construct a logical path between this new position and the starting point. So, while reading this, I definitely found myself to be a vertical thinker. And a good example of this would be in Ed 344, which was Diane's class that I took last semester. When we had to memorize the goals for developing readers, I had to memorize them in the order that they appeared on the paper. I don't know why, but it just made more sense for my brain to memorize them. And then when I sat down for the quiz, it just made it easier for me to just go down the list in my head and write them down, as opposed to trying to just remember them in general and then like going to the test and trying to remember them completely out of order. Like it made so much more sense for me and helped me to memorize them to do it in the order that they appeared on the paper rather than just totally jumbled up. So my question for all you fellow listeners, for you to answer next week is, what are you? Are you a vertical thinker or are you a lateral thinker? So that was something I kind of enjoyed reading. It was pretty interesting. So moving on to my last connection from chapter 5. This was on page 91, and it involves non-impulsiveness, which refers to how quickly people make decisions about messages. People who rush to a decision are impulsive. In contrast, people who take a long time and consider things from many perspectives are reflective or non-impulsive. So after reading this, it was definite I'm not impulsive at all. It takes me forever to make a decision, especially big life-changing choices. Don't ever ask me to pick a place for lunch because it'll take me forever to decide. And then while I kept reading further on in the paragraph, the book then stated, reflective people are most concerned with accuracy. They dread being wrong, so they think about all the options of a decision, even if it takes a long time. And this is something I would definitely say is accurate for me. I can admit when I'm wrong, but I don't like being wrong. And I think I don't like being wrong more so because I don't like how I don't like So moving on to my last connection from chapter 5, it involves non-impulsiveness, which refers to how quickly people make decisions about messages. People who rush to a decision are impulsive. In contrast, people who take a long time and consider things from many perspectives are reflective or non-impulsive. After reading this, it was very, Moving on to my last connection from chapter 5, which involves non-impulsiveness, which refers to how quickly people make decisions about messages. People who rush to a decision are impulsive. In contrast, people who take a long time and consider things from many perspectives are reflective or non-impulsive. I am definitely not impulsive, and I take a really long time to make decisions. Especially really big life choice decisions. So don't ever ask me to pick a place for lunch because I will take forever. So after I continued reading, I really liked this statement that the book had, which says, reflective people are most concerned with accuracy. They dread being wrong, so they think about all the options of a decision, even if it takes a long time. And I think this statement is very accurate for myself, just because I don't like being wrong. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong, but I would say that I don't like being wrong more so because I am terrified of the embarrassment that comes along with being wrong in certain situations. So I think that's partly why my decision process takes so long, But on the other hand, for me, it takes so long because I'm outweighing the pros and the cons, and how is this going to affect my life now? How is it going to affect my life later? Or, just the fact that, crap, what's the answer? I don't want to be wrong, so I'm going to take a really long time to think about this so I can make the right choice. So that's all I have for you guys. Those are a few of my connections from this week, and I will see you guys next week.